Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition is Gym Power, The Lost Dimension in 3D, for the Super Nintendo, brought to us by Electrobrain. Gym Power, The Lost Dimension 3D was developed by Loriciel, which was a French company that mainly produced games for PC platforms. Gym Power was one of their few franchises, appearing in several different titles, and while the games would be called Gym Power, there was no real connection between most of them. The Lost Dimension in 3D is easily one of the hardest games I remember from my childhood. I was never able to complete it as a kid, so this video alone is a huge accomplishment. So here we go with Gym Power, The Lost Dimension in 3D. Gym Power combines a few different types of gameplay into one game, with various different level styles of straight action platforming that we'll be starting off with in level 1, top-down Mode 7-like levels, and even scrolling shooter levels. When we start up the game, I'm going to go to the options menu where you can look at the controls as well as change the difficulty, and I'll be changing it to the normal difficulty. Level number 1 is an action platform style level. In Gym Power, you are killed in one hit. The hit detection in the game can be iffy to say the least. The game does feature some of my favorite music, and the music was actually composed by the same man who made the Turrican soundtrack. You'll have a jump and a fire button, as well as your bomb ability, which you can see represented in the upper left corner. You have your life count at the top, your bomb count below that, and your key count below that. You'll need keys to open up different doorways so that you can continue on. For the most part, in the straight action platform levels, the keys come pretty naturally, with only the second level of the game really needing to be explored to locate keys. I have played the game a lot, especially the first stage, playing it over and over again as a kid. I already know exactly what to expect at each twist and turn as far as enemies. When you're first playing the game, take it very, very slowly. Yes, you do have a time limit at the top center of the screen, and you will game over when you run out of time. However, you will have enough time to slowly take a few steps, wait a second or two to make sure no enemies are coming, and then continue on. When you see an enemy, try to make sure you're out of its radius of movement, then take it out before proceeding. Enemies will walk off screen, of course, and you sometimes won't even hear the explosion of them dying, so wait a second to be sure that they are truly dead before attempting to move on. Throughout this run, there will be several deaths in the game, but thankfully there's not a penalty really to dying. You'll end up just respawning directly where you are, and have invulnerability for a brief period of time. The game does give you a plentiful amount of lives, but with its increased difficulty as you make it farther and farther into the game, the lives will drop very fast. In many ways, the game is similar to the Contra series, though this one, due to the hit detection and not as much movement and freedom as the Contra games provide, so this can be even tougher at times. You notice that big enemy I fought just a little bit ago with the attachable head. The thing about it is, you just want to make sure you're out of the radius of the head's movements and keep attacking it every time it jumps. Be very careful of the totems on the walls that spit out the arrows. These reach a good distance, as well as, of course, just like everything, is an instant death, so you want to time your jumps in between the spikes they shoot out properly. Even the water drops will kill you in one hit, so wait for one to fall, step in between, and then keep moving. Here, destroy this item thing before continuing to jump across the different platforms. The timing of your jumps is crucial to make sure that you don't miss and land in spikes below. Of course, there's giant crushers here that have spikes on them, so not only can you get crushed by them, just walking into them with the improper timing will cause you to die. Walk in between all the barrels, taking out one of those big dog enemies. Up here, do a big jump over the 4 set of spikes. One of the trickier jumps in the entire level. Here, take it slowly, jumping in between each of the spikes, planting your feet properly, and then attempting to make that next jump. This jump right here is tricky. Jump after you see the arrow go by, land on the platform, grab the items, and quickly jump over to the right, jumping over the next oncoming arrow. Another thing about the game is the levels are quite lengthy, and because of that, running out of lives and game overing, you'll start all the way back at the very beginning of a level. And because of that, it's another reason why this game can be extremely difficult and frustrating, to say the least. The breakaway bridges, just time your jump on them and be sure to jump again if need be, as of course they keep repeating the cycle of breaking open over and over. At the end, we'll grab the jetpack and move on to the boss level of level number 1. The boss actually works as its own stage, which is a big plus. The first giant boss will fly into the screen, open up, and expose an eye that you can hit, firing out projectiles while it's open. Every boss is tricky, but also has a distinct pattern allowing you to hit it. You may want to use some of your S-bombs if you want to during the course of the fight. It'll then close up and start bouncing around the room. You'll be able to hang on to that left side as it bounces. It'll then start rotating around the screen. Be sure to be out of the way of it as it rotates, and then be on the opposite side, the right side of the screen, when it lands and then reopens again. It'll fly to the background and go back to the center, where the pattern will repeat itself. Make sure though that you're hugging the left wall when it tries to bounce its way towards you. If you're not directly hugging that left wall, it will hit you. The hit detection, like I said, is extremely iffy, and the hitboxes sometimes are very large. Level number 2 is the Guardian's Castle. This is one of those Mode 7-like levels, with some really nice graphical touches. Here you'll rotate Jim by hitting the L and R buttons to go in whatever direction you want to rotate. Still, one-hit deaths here just like before, except now we have a different perspective to things. Spikes line the walls everywhere throughout this level, so you'll have to be very careful in your movements. Your goal, of course, is to make it to the exit of each floor and then eventually out, and to do so you're going to need to find keys. There are a couple enemies that you can destroy like these rollers, but sometimes it's actually easier just to move in between them and keep on moving. Getting used to the movement during this segment will take up a majority of your time and is actually one of the tough spots about even getting through. It's also extremely disorienting, especially with those rotating circle platforms that make the screen continue to spin over and over again while you're on them. While on them, try to jump your way off of them, and be careful that it doesn't fling you in an improper direction right into an enemy or spike wall. We make it to the second floor, and we're going to go to the left and grab those couple of keys before going through this corridor filled with lasers. Once here, go into this open area if you want to. It's optional, but it does have 2 extra lives, which at this point will probably be very useful to you. Then go back out here and walk in between the spikes. Yes, there's gray things on the ground are spikes, and they will kill you. Over here, you're going to destroy both of the enemies. Once you destroy one of the rolling enemies, be careful because they leave a destroyed floor. And if you walk over that destroyed floor, yep, you guessed it, you end up dying. Grab the keys at the far end of that pattern and then go back over to here, moving your way in between all the rollers until you make it to the next set here, and you'll open up the doors. Open up all 3 of the gates, watching out for more of the rollers and a couple of those spinning platforms which are going to disorient you, in order to find 4 keys. In order to get through the area, you pretty much have to do this stage in this exact way. That way you'll have 4 keys at one time, which is what is needed to advance to the next floor. Just like any great game, enemies do respawn if you go too far off screen, so be very careful of that. Open all 4 of the gates and then head on down. You'll see a lock gate to your left. Keep on going and destroy a couple of rollers as you're making your way through, watching out for spikes and grabbing the next key. Open up the gate we passed just a few seconds ago after watching out for a laser firing, and here move in between all the rotating platforms and make it to the next staircase. On the third floor, this floor is actually thankfully easier than the previous. Grab the key in the upper left corner of this big square you start off with, grab the key in the right, make sure you grab the time in case you're getting a little bit low, and then continue on. Jumping between the lasers and rotating platforms there, extremely difficult, and then you want to watch out for all the gray area lining the ground here. Use those keys we picked up in order to open up the gates into this big old room. Watch out for the lasers firing on the walls, maneuver the spinning platforms, of course, don't want to walk into the spikes, and grab a key. This area is very difficult to walk between all the different rollers, so take them out if you want to. Once past the room, grab another key and open up the 2 gates. Move along the icy floor. Yep, the white stuff on the ground is ice and will cause you to slide until you get off of it. Grab the keys on the far opposite end of the room and then go back to the room with the ice and go through. Here you'll make it to the finish, watch out for a couple more spinning things, and complete level 2. There is no boss, thankfully, for stage number 2, and we'll move on to level 3. Once again, changing up the gameplay style. Level number 3 is a scrolling shooter, very similar to Gradius. Here you can either hold in the attack button to keep firing or mash it to fire quicker. The hit detection on your ship, maybe not as difficult as it is when you're in your standard gym human form, but it's still tricky. All the areas pretty much have tricks to them in order to make it through. The squisher here will come down and you want to hug the left wall until it goes back up before attempting to go through. There are plenty of things in the background and foreground that will try to trick you and think that they are actually solid objects that can kill you. And then when you put your guard down, all of a sudden an object that looked like it may be in the foreground or background will end up killing you. So you have to be on your toes and play the game many times to know what will and what won't end up killing you. Keep hugging that left wall so that when the missiles fire up here, you won't get hit by any of them. You'll have a giant swinging mace ball going back and forth, so be sure to dodge that. Thankfully also, you'll have your bomb still, as well as if you press the button, you'll be able to actually lunge yourself forward with A. This can be very useful for quickly moving ahead in case something is coming up from behind, or you need to quickly jet yourself forward in between 2 things coming down. Thankfully, this first scrolling shooter-like area is not as difficult as the one we'll be doing later in the game. Here you'll have to battle a mini-like boss. Keep firing at him non-stop, dodging the fire that he ends up firing out, of course. They come in pairs of 3s. Once he's done, don't put your guard down for even a second because you'll immediately be attacked by some cannons on clouds. Then you're going to have multiple of those giant mace balls in a row. Don't try to dodge in and out of any of the projectiles coming out of the missile launcher, just destroy it before you get too close to it. Keep hugging that left wall for the most part throughout most of the level, because that'll give you enough opportunity to destroy what's upcoming ahead of you. Here you have a series of things trying to rotate towards you, just keep blasting and destroying each one at a time. You can fly over those other things coming, and then you'll have a series of giant missiles coming your way. Just keep firing at them. You can sometimes destroy them, or just maneuver in between each one of them. There's going to be 4 rotating ships. Just keep firing as they rotate over and over again. You can use your bombs to help you out. Here's one of the tougher spots because you won't be able to take out all the cannons unless you use a lot of your bombs, so take the down path as I find it a little bit easier. You also won't get stuck at a dead end if you take the bottom path. Wait for another one of the giant squishers to rise up. Then keep at the bottom of the screen. That way the next set of enemies will just go overhead. Next up, more Mace Ball, but this time this one moves in a different pattern, kind of more figure 8 style pattern, so be very careful while dodging it. After a bunch of missiles come up, the area will open up and you're at the end of the stage. Next up is our next boss, the Doom's Destroyer. This is a giant ship and a very tricky fight. It has giant flames on the back of the ship, and then the ship will start moving towards you. Go down when it does this so you can avoid getting hit. Unfortunately, the hit detection, like I said, can be questionable as I take a hit and end up losing a life there. I'm going to lose several lives, like I said. Here, take out this cannon. It fires out projectiles in a specific way each time, allowing for an opening for you to get in and end up doing some more damage. Don't be fooled by the camera scrolling a little bit forward. It'll then retract back, so be careful. Then it will go overhead, and then once again, quickly come back just to try to fool you so you end up getting hit by it. In front of the ship itself will move up and down, and you'll then go above it. Fall down into this little pocket, move back and forth as the ship does as well. It'll then blast forward quite a bit before once again retracting. Then take out the giant mace ball that pops out here. As long as you can stay out of the reach, you should be okay, and just keep blasting it. Unfortunately, the ship may end up coming up and end up hitting you. Once the mace ball has been destroyed though, the boss fight is over and we move on to the next level. Level number 4 is the Mutant Forest. This level is another one of the action platform style level, and a few new enemies are introduced, including the zombies. The worst of these enemies, though, are the piranha plants that end up firing out different projectiles straight at you. These little running guys here are your pretty standard fare that we've dealt with in the first level, just they look a little different. Here, time your jumps appropriately so that you're only landing on the platform, of course, when it's above spikes. These piranha plants, like I said, are probably the worst, especially when you get multiple of them in a row or on platforms that are difficult to hit. Open up the lock gate here and then keep firing to destroy the new little guys that try to walk into you, but they're pretty easy as long as you're blasting them from afar. Here, there's a vulture flying back and forth. Keep jumping up and blasting it to destroy it before then attempting to go to one of the platforms. Jump up here and keep blasting the little guys coming at you until they're all gone. I recommend using bombs here to destroy all the piranha plants instead of trying to deal with each one individually. After that, another vulture, destroy it, and keep moving. Just like I mentioned in level number 1 of the game, the real difficulty of the game is just because of being able to get killed at any second by something, whether it's an enemy running into you or missing a jump. Taking your time is the absolute best way to get familiar, and even when you know what's coming, as you've noticed, I still end up getting clipped by an enemy here or there. There are many different power-ups for the gun in the game, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure which ones are more powerful than others. They do look different, and I think that means they also have a little bit different of a hitbox, but I'm not even positive on that. For this little sub-boss, what you'll have to do is just keep firing, and every time he jumps, make sure that you're out of the range of that jump, and you duck underneath of his arms that extend out. If you end up being just a little bit too close, either one of the arms as they reach out, like you saw when I got up, I ended up getting clipped and lost a life. Here you'll have to jump up on those platforms so you can pick up both keys before making it over to the right. Here I grabbed an invulnerability, which I have grabbed a couple of times, but it only lasts for only a few seconds. So it really isn't that useful other than walking by an enemy that may be standing right next to you when you grab it. Take out the piranha plant and then use the 3 keys in order to open the next 3 gates. Of course, you're going to want to be careful here that you don't get squashed accidentally by the corners, but more importantly, you don't get too close to the platforms as they rise up, so you don't end up hitting those spikes on the side. Stay on the left side here and keep firing to take out the vulture enemies. When you're sure you've taken out a few of them, then inch your way forward just to make sure before continuing fully. This can be really tricky to grab the items and then drop down and also be able to land and grab the key without hitting those spikes below. Make sure you have the right momentum before attempting to make a jump. Make it this platform and duck down with all these bees and use your bombs to destroy all the bees. You can then grab an invulnerability that will help you a little bit while you're trying to destroy some more of those bees before finally destroying a hive. Of course, you'll have some rising platforms. Once again, don't get too close to hit the spikes on the sides of them, and as soon as you get on top, run as fast as you can off. Here, there's some more bees. Just keep firing from a distance till the bees are all destroyed in front of you, then run up and start firing to destroy the hive. Be very careful of these little running guys. Sometimes you can actually jump over them if you want to. When you drop down here, be very careful of the piranha plant on the very fast moving platform. Be sure to take that out before attempting to jump to that platform. After grabbing, thankfully, a 1-up near the end of the level, we grab ourselves the rocket pack and we blast off for the next boss fight. Next boss battle is the Scarlet Skull. This thing flies in from the background, and after it takes its position, you can start firing at it, taking out the left eyeball. Keep firing, it will rise up and down. Hug the left wall to make sure that you don't accidentally get hit by it, but it rocks a little bit back and forth. It'll fly to the background and then come back, and then you'll be able to start firing at the right eyeball. Keep blasting, it'll then start circling around quickly. Be careful and try to do your best to get out of the way. Now, when it's moving in the circular format, until it comes back full force, you won't actually be able to get hit by it. Get back to that left side and keep blasting the eye till it's destroyed. It'll start moving around in a little bit of a weird wave-like pattern, and then repeat back to the middle. Your goal is to keep firing at it, destroying the mouth-like appendage that comes out. You can only hit the appendage sometimes when it's actually being used. Once you do enough damage to it though, you've defeated the boss and you can move on to the next level of the game. The next level of the game is another one of the Mode 7 style levels. However, this time you're on a bike. This is an extremely fast-paced level. You have a strict time limit, and you'll have to maneuver around. There's tons of course spikes leading on walls all around. You'll also have gravel on the ground to slow up your bike, and giant pits to try to avoid. The rotating little circles, of course, are also back, so you'll have to contend with them. You'll want to take your time and slowly inch your way forward until you have a straightaway and then blast forward as much as you can. While you are able to pick up a few time pickups here and there, if you take too much time, you're going to run out of it. The good news is though, the levels are completely straightforward. It's difficult to get used to controlling the vehicle, but you don't have to worry about finding keys, are getting lost. As long as you keep moving forward, you'll have no issue. When you make it to the big pits like this, you just want to keep moving quickly forward so that you'll be able to get over the pits with enough speed. Be sure to grab the time here as we keep going forward, and then over this diagonal set of hole before going down to the next floor down below. The third and final floor, of course, also is the most difficult of the 3 floors. There are lasers lining some of the walls, and they will occasionally clip you, but I usually just risk it and blast forward, hoping I don't get picked off by one of them. Slowly edge forward, keep making your jumps the way you need to, even with little bumpers on the side, and eventually you should be able to come to the end. It's kind of funny though, they put a little time boost right at the very last turn, so in case you were down to only a few seconds left. The next level of the game is back into the flying vehicle, and another scrolling shooter stage. This one is the last of the scrolling shooter levels, and it's definitely a lot tougher than the first one we dealt with. Immediately start blasting and try to take out these little ships that are going to come down towards you. There's cannons lining the ceilings throughout a lot of the areas, and you'll want to try to do your best to keep firing at those. This is a lot more action-packed. There's very few openings for you to maneuver around things, so usually there's a specific spot they want you to be at, and if you're not at that spot, you're probably going to get clipped. Here you have some rolling wheels that we've been dealing with. Just be sure to be a little bit off of the left wall for once, so that they don't end up rolling through you. Here you'll have bouncing fire. Once again, I mentioned that you can also charge forward, so make sure that you know which button that is so that you can pull it out when you need it. That little lunge forward can be a huge lifesaver at times. It also can be a hindrance if you accidentally use it at the wrong times. Someone obviously who has a lot of experience with scrolling shooters will have an easier time in a level like this, but because of the size of your ship and the really tight corridors sometimes, it takes a lot of practice. Here you'll have a ship that moves around in a circle, keeps firing over and over again. Just keep blasting it until it eventually goes down. Maneuver in and out of the giant spike columns. Thankfully, you'll have enough time to get in between each of them. After blasting away a tank, you'll then have some more of that lava coming up. Wait for the fire to dissipate by hanging out just in front of the right tower of fire. That way you don't get hit by the left side. Here you'll have bouncing flame once again. Use that little nudge you can use forward to help you avoid getting hit. Here you'll have to battle another sub-boss. This giant thing just moves up and down a little bit, fires a few projectiles, but it's actually, I think, easier than some of the other ones we've dealt with. Here, this is where things get a little tough. You'll have very little time to keep blasting and destroy the walls blocking your way. If you don't really lay into that fire button, you may end up hitting them. Now here, you want to take the bottom path. By making the mistake and accidentally take the top path, and with no way to get back down due to the projectiles, unfortunately, I end up having to lose the life there. Here you have more of those wheels, and then a bunch of little ships are going to fly on screen. Fire at a few and just try to dodge their fire. Thankfully, you can float over the next two giant things of fire that are coming out of the lava. You won't have much space to maneuver around here with this tank, so you want to hug just the ceiling right below it so you can clear that giant thing. Here you have another one of those little sub guys that'll move up and down a bit, but he'll only be on screen a few seconds before you have to deal with more of those walls that try to block you. After a little bit of a tight corridor though, that's the end of the level. You can move on now to the next boss. The next boss is the Metal Roadster. Now this thing comes flying from the right side of the screen. Hug the left wall, work your way down, and fire at the front of it a few times. Then you want to hover upwards so that when it starts coming towards you, you don't get hit by it. Go to the ceiling, and after the second time here, you'll want to go to the back and have to take out this little small capsule that pops out the back. Pretty simple pattern of it just moving along and then jumping over to the right. As long as you stay out of its line of jumping and fire, you'll have no issue. You can get kind of a little bit of a circular pattern going here so that you're able to keep hitting it and move along with it as it jumps. Then when you get up on top after it's destroyed, hug not only the ceiling, but the left side as it scrolls. That way when the vehicle jumps, you won't get hit by it. Then attack the front until it's finally destroyed. Once it's done though, you've completed the boss and we move on to the next level of the game. Level number 7 is the final stage of the game. It's another one of the action platform segments. Everything that we've done pretty much in levels 1 and 4 are being brought back full force. Being the final level in a game like this, you can expect it to be pretty challenging. Just like always though, our goal is to take steps, wait for enemies to move back and forth and take them out from a distance before trying to invade their space. You probably used up a lot of your bombs throughout, so you may not have a lot of those at your disposal, which is okay for the most part of this level. Here I run to the right side to be safe before opening up that item capsule. You'll have some little spiders that you can't destroy moving up and down. Just wait for them to retreat up the webs so that you'll be able to get over. Multiple different times throughout the level, you're going to have flames that move around a platform, giving you just a little window while they're moving around for you to get through. Be sure to jump on the platforms and jump up and grab the key while watching out for the falling spikes. The gap and window you have to get through the flames as they're going around is very limited, so you'll have to choose your time to jump wisely. These bats always end up hitting me usually, as they spawn quickly and it's hard to get away from them. But when you see them, run back fast and then turn around and start firing. You'll have a few squishers before the next sub-boss. This giant snake-like creature pops out of one hole and then goes into the next one. After going just from one to the other, it then comes back out and starts doing some figure 8s all around the sky. Stay close to the ground, don't jump up towards them, and take your shots when you can get them. When it does a little rotation, try to run away from it to the opposite side so that when it rotates you don't get clipped by them. Here you'll have to ride the platforms as they move, being very careful of the falling spikes. Usually I end up getting hit by one of them during that segment. Ride the moving platforms, grab the time, as well as more importantly the key, and stay on these platforms until you destroy all the bats that are going to be located on the next platform. Open up the gate, and then start jumping to the next platforms, watching out for the things moving up and down. On this platform, fire a bunch until you destroy all the little crawling bugs that are on that next platform. This is tough. Watch the spikes. You'll have a very brief opportunity after they move up and down a bunch for you to get past them. Here you'll have a very similar thing of a very brief amount of time you can use the jump over the thing that pops out of the ground in order to make it to that next platform. Watch out for all the spikes, keep moving, then you'll be introduced to a little flying gargoyle guy. Either use a bomb or keep blasting him, watching out for his own projectile before heading on. Replacing the piranha plants as one of the more annoying enemies in this level is the skulls. They pretty much do the exact same thing as the enemies from level 4. Just like we did before, wait on this moving platform, take out the bugs, and then head over. Here you have another one of those giant snakes, except this one doesn't fly around, instead just keeps popping out of the ground, so keep firing at him until he's dead. These spikes, like the ones we just saw earlier, come out up and down quickly, but then retreat for a few seconds, allowing you to pass. Yep, more of the giant snakes. They just have to destroy them, and it's kind of a nice little break that you'll get for a few seconds. Making the jump here on this platform, just because of the way they move, is very hard. The momentum is kind of iffy here. Try to duck down on this platform and keep firing until you kill the bugs on the next platform, though it can sometimes be very tough to actually do damage to them. If you have bombs, you may want to use them on those bugs, and then head over. Thankfully, we can just stay on the platform here and take out the bat without him coming down too low to hit us. Just like earlier in the level, move in between the spiders when the opportunity presents itself. Here we're going to have to deal with another sub-boss, another giant snake. He pops out of the ground and then sticks his tongue out. Thankfully, it's pretty easy to dodge, as you'll be able to do a nice jump as soon as he pops out to avoid that tongue. You just don't want to be too close to the left or right of the platform so that when he pops up, he clips you with his giant head. It'll take several shots to get rid of him, but once he's done, we can continue. Here, drop down onto the platform as it moves and grab the key. Thankfully, we don't have too much left in the level. Couple of normal soldier guys that we've seen since the first level, and then we can unlock the door. Ride the platform up. You can open up the item capsule if you want from the distance, or jump to the rotating platforms to grab the capsule. This is a good opportunity, so make sure you do open up all the item capsules to stock up on some items. Run underneath all the squishers when they give you the chance. So basically, they'll come down, giving you enough time to run fast as the ones will come up from behind. At the end of the hallway, though, that is the end of the level, and we now move on to the final boss of the game. The final boss of Gym Power is known simply as the Guardian. He's basically a giant version of those weird gargoyles we just fought in the previous level. Thankfully, he has a big hitbox that you can keep hitting. He fires out a giant amount of fireballs that you'll have to jump, and the timing on the jump is very tricky. As far as his body goes, the front of him has a huge hitbox that will hit you a lot. So after he fires those fireballs, be prepared to run to the opposite side of the screen. Then quickly back when he ends up jumping back. It's not really that difficult of a fight. Thankfully, the screens are not scrolling at anything, and you don't have to worry about moving that much. His back foot is a good opportunity, though, because when his back foot ends up hitting you, if you duck sometimes or just keep moving, even though it looks like that back foot clips you, sometimes it'll just go over you. After you deliver enough hits, though, he'll fly into the sky, and you can enjoy the brief ending, the Gym Power. So there you have it, a text-based ending for Gym Power: The Lost Dimension in 3D. Definitely one of the tougher games I have done for a play it through, that is for sure. And it's a game, though, I do remember from my childhood playing over and over and over, trying to get through, but was never able to do so. Overall, though, for what the game is, if it just had a little bit of an easier difficulty, would definitely be a stellar experience. Having 3 different types of gameplay with the Mode 7, as well as the scrolling shooter levels and those action platform levels, combined with a great soundtrack, would have made Gym Power a must-play game for the SNES. But because of its difficulty, it's hard for me to really recommend it to everybody. After the credits, you can put in your initials for the high score, and then of course you can start the game all over again. But that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.